I want to talk in part two about Liverpool's front three. I feel like we're endlessly going to be talking about Liverpool's front three this summer. The striker situation. Post Florian Wirtz, we're already moving on, Beth, from Florian Wirtz. We now know we need a striker at number 9. I just want to read some stuff that's been breaking in the football media this week. Lewis Steele at the Mail says, the noise I keep getting is that Liverpool are not done this transfer window and they will go for a number 9. Ian Doyle at The Echo says Liverpool are huge admirer of Newcastle United's Alexander Isak and are keeping tabs on the situation of Ugo Ekitike and Eintracht Frankfurt. Fabrizio Romano says Alexander Isak has been Liverpool's dream target since day one, but it remains complicated. Now, I want to start with Isak because I'm fascinated but trying not to let myself get excited on this one. Since we started talking about the inevitability of Darwin Núñez moving on, I think halfway through last season, approximately, I think the name on everyone's lips in terms of who we would want to replace him was Alexander Isak. He was getting better and better as the season went by. The only doubt about him was his prior fitness record, but he was continuing to be regularly available for Newcastle. He had a stellar season, backing up a really good season from the year before. So he's target number 1. We could all guess at that in anyone's estimation. Figures to extract him from Newcastle being talked around the £130 million mark, huge numbers. But then the conversation moved towards whether Newcastle actually felt any compunction to let him go at all. They qualified for the Champions League, and I think most assumptions were that at that point they could more or less say to the player, you're giving us at least another year. Look, we've delivered Champions League football. I mean, he is under contract anyway. But the noise, the mood music around him and LFC, it won't quieten. It just won't go away entirely. I can't help feeling there might be a delicious sting in this tale. What's your reading of it?
My reading of it is, I mean, it's not great sort of a revelation, but Liverpool are very keen on him. Arne Slot is very keen on him, but pretty much every top club in Europe is probably keen on him, and the manager is as well. So it is very much about Newcastle's willingness to do a deal. I think it would have been a deal that would have been much likelier had Newcastle not qualified for the Champions League. I think the fact that they have, maybe makes his willingness to stay there a little bit more. However, he's got how many years left on his contract? 3. So I think he will want to move on from Newcastle, if not this summer, then next summer. And I'm saying that with the greatest of respect. And I know Newcastle obviously financially in a position where they can, assemble a squad over the next couple of seasons that is capable of challenging for top honours. And I might be proved wrong, but I do think Isak will view himself as a player who should be winning the big prizes, and to do that he's probably going to have to move. So I think a lot of it will come down to the player himself and whether he really is keen on moving this summer, whether he's happy to wait it out. It is hard. I completely agree with Lewis. I think it's hard to visualise when you look back at Liverpool's previous transfer strategy, them spending upwards of 100 million on another attack-minded player, having signed Wirtz. However, a lot of the noise coming out of the club when they did sign Wirtz was making the point of Liverpool were only able to do that because the transfer strategy over the past couple of seasons has very much been about waiting for the right people to become available. They obviously only spend 12 million last summer on Federico Chiesa, and that is what I thought gave them the wiggle room to be able to do this summer. So I think Liverpool probably do have the funds if, and it's a big if, Newcastle will be open to doing a deal and Isak himself were willing to try and push that through. I can't see Liverpool spending, if they don't get Isak, spending big money on a striker who they're not 100% confident on, because that isn't the Liverpool strategy. I think it's only if they feel there is a real viable option elsewhere. Ekitike is obviously the name that has been linked a lot. Home hands up, I haven't watched an awful lot of him, seeing bits and bobs. To me, he doesn't look like a player worth the money that Frankfurt, we know, are very, very good at getting what they want in terms of transfer fees. So unless Liverpool are 100% confident, I could see, and I would also sort of back up going into the season without signing someone if they don't feel like the right person is available. But they do need a number 9. So, yeah, it's interesting. I wouldn't be surprised now, I think we've said this a few times on shows, whether there is a little bit of a lull after Wirtz and Kirkes where, they wait and see how the situation unfolds, how the market moves, and maybe there's more action later in the window. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I think a lot depends on the player and how eager he is to leave Newcastle this summer.
I'm fascinated with what will happen with Isak. Ian, as I said before, I can't quite see it being as simple as he's too rich for everyone's blood this summer. I can't. It's probably likely that he is, but I can't see it as being a definite. And from Liverpool's point of view, yes, they're sometimes happier to do no business than the wrong business. Well, they're very often happy to do that, but they will feel. They'll feel very definitely that they will want to move on Darwin Núñez, not just, oh, well, we couldn't get a striker we wanted, we'll go with Darwin Núñez and maybe even Diogo Jota again. They'll want to sort this problem out. The fact that they've moved so decisively for Wirtz and Frimpong and surprised the footballing world, really, with the Wirtz capture, says to me that they're almost not leaving no stone unturned, but they are the Liverpool mean business in how they intend to complete a body of transfer work this summer. They will want to buy a number 9. Now, to go to one of Beth's points, this is where it gets complex. I just can't see them compromising. Even if Ekitike is expensive or its price drops by 10 million and he's gettable for 65 million plus add-ons, I can't see them necessarily pulling that trigger when they think by next year Isak's gettable for a more reasonable fee and actually gettable. I can see them wanting to not quite go to the wire, but really, really push at Newcastle this summer on Isak. I mean, it does depend how much they'd pay, but I think they'd want to fight and fight. The one thing they have in their corner, I'd say, apart from hopefully money to burn, as we believe, is Newcastle, as with Anthony Gordon, were prepared to make Isak a pawn in their PSR game, if you want to call it that, last summer. When they faced issues with PSR, they hawked around those two players. Now, they pulled back from it and sold other squad players and were able to sort of pretend they hadn't been so, what's the word, frivolous with those boys' futures as they in fact might have been. And that perhaps gives a bit of a moral argument to those players, and Isak in this case especially.